Breaking news! Chinese Concubine anime turns out to be incredibly good. Of all the anime to come out in recent months, there was one that absolutely blindsided me with how amazing it was. The Apothecary Diaries was truly beyond my expectations in so many ways. Its plots within plots style of storytelling was one of the most superb examples of writing talent to air in 2023. The detail with which this story is constructed and the foresight put into it are something so remarkable that I have to say that this is some of the best detective fiction I have ever experienced. Forget Sherlock Holmes.
Discombobulate.
Say goodbye to Batman.
Because of Batman!
The world's greatest detective is in the house, and it's a tiny, grumpy little cat girl named Mao Mao. Now, the Apothecary Diaries follows the daughter of an apothecary, one who starts the series off getting kidnapped and sold into service in the Rear Palace. Basically, she's a part of the staff who take care of the Chinese Emperor's collection of women who come from all the most powerful families in the land. Now, Mao Mao spends a few months as a servant girl, not because she can't move up the ranks, but because she doesn't want her captors to earn more money for selling her. However, she slips up in trying to help out two of the consorts when both their children suddenly fall terribly ill. She takes her chance to write some notes about how to handle the illness and leaves them attached to flowers that she then leaves in the windows of the consorts' rooms. Unfortunately, one woman ignores the note and her infant son dies soon after. However, the other woman did heed the warning, which leads to an investigation into who left the note, and that ultimately gets Mao Mao discovered as someone far more intelligent than is required for her position. A dangerous thing when it comes to the politics and jockeying of the Emperor's court. So that's how Mao Mao becomes the official food taster for Lady Gyokyo, the woman who heeded her warnings, and an object of amusement for the head eunuch working in the Rear Palace, Jinshi. And this starts her down the road of trying to just live her life without getting too heavily involved in the affairs of high society, whilst Jinshi and many others constantly attempt to recruit her into solving mysteries and using her alchemical knowledge to help with various medical problems around the Rear Palace. And now this is where the great storytelling of Apothecary Diaries really begins. Now, one of the initial joys of this was the fact that it was one of the most well-constructed pieces of detective fiction. On top of that, though, was the fact that a good amount of the mysteries seemed like really minor things. The story is effectively scattered across a bunch of small arcs that detail individual mysteries that Mao Mao is tasked with solving. Everything from the deaths of military officials all the way to the mysterious case of burns one worker suffered while burning discarded waste. Either way, it's very grounded and not very over-the-top detective work that generally involves Mao Mao having to resort to speculation for conclusions, as several instances leave her with nothing more than the ability to do that. Still, her guesswork tends to be pretty close to the money, and the way information is parsed together across these tasks makes it both satisfying to watch and fun to speculate at yourself as you try to work out what exactly is going on. Of course, I think one of the more important parts of this creation is the characters and how they're written. Mao Mao in particular I find very interesting. She's not entirely altruistic, but someone whose senses are more geared towards her preferred field of practice, drug making. Many of her skills with medicines and poisons helps her with her new job, and the skills she learned to deduce illnesses from symptoms comes in handy when it comes down to the logic and intuitions for solving mysteries. But more than that, she's not so cold-hearted that she won't lend a hand, as proven by the fact that she intervened in the case of Lady Gyokyo. However, she's still more motivated to perform when given a reward, and will stubbornly refuse to help when she absolutely does not want to. She simultaneously comes off as a grumpy and unfriendly person while also being somewhat endearing for her quirks. It leads to me feeling like she's not all that bad, just a little uninterested in people. Especially Jinshi. Speaking of whom, Jinshi is pretty much the man in charge of the Rear Palace, and his key weapon is the very beautiful appearance that enchants every woman who lays eyes on him. Except for the one woman he really wants to influence with his looks, and that happens to be his favorite object of interest, Mao Mao. Jinshi is kind of the spoiled kid of the series, the one who gets everything he asks for, but not the one thing he seems to really want. Either way, he puts on this facade of this nice, caring, charming gentleman, and it totally creeps Mao Mao out. It's a very funny dynamic, but when he actually starts being more real, more selfish, and kind of childish, she's more okay with it. Now, the usage of these two characters and the way they interact add a really good layer of mild comedy to the show that keeps it entertaining in the time between high points. It doesn't create an exaggerated or overly comedic sideshow to keep you invested, but it will give you a few mild laughs as character interactions and bits of dialogue are pretty humorous. And that makes the funny moments mesh well with the more straight-laced and serious tones of the storytelling. And with the addition of really well-constructed side characters, you get a lot of depth out of the cast and many different levels of storytelling. From the 3 princesses of the Verdigris house to the 4 consorts of the Rear Palace, to any number of officials who show up as side characters, all of them are so well utilized in this that it's hard to not absolutely love the story the show lays out. Let's for example take Lacan, the creepy strategist who turns out to be a device by which you get loads of character development and backstory. It's a great example for how characters are more often than not featured in the story to execute multiple roles. Lacan helps develop the main character Mau Mau, and he also helps move the plot along by being an important piece in setting up certain interactions and getting Mau Mau involved in certain cases. This show takes a bunch of small pieces and puts them together to create something incredible when it comes to storytelling. Because that's really what makes this shine. Apothecary Diaries is not the kind of anime to have some blow-off-top moment that goes absolutely nutty. You won't get those ultra-hype moments or extremely funny comedy routines. However, I have to say that the storytelling and plot lines are a tapestry of incredible and seemingly insignificant threads that tie together into something that absolutely blindsided me by the end of the season. And warning, this next bit may contain a few major spoilers for the season. The series is comprised of a long list of small mysteries that Mau Mau is roped into solving. Now, there are plenty of mysteries in this series that are either predictable or pretty well spelled out for you to solve yourself before the show reaches a conclusion. On the other hand, there were some that had me absolutely stumped up to the very last moment. So while I really did enjoy the series for its well-constructed detective fiction and fun premise, it felt like it was still lacking something. Until the very end. Yes, it had great character development, and it had some really good moments, but it genuinely felt like it was all just one elongated romance plot that was gonna blue ball me. What I hadn't realized was that all of those random events happening around the palace that Mau Mau was forced to deal with were all tied together. All the fun little plots the story did under the guise of pushing 2 people together was a smokescreen meant to deceive you. It all ties together into one big web of plots that amounts to what looks like a plot to overthrow the Emperor. And when you look back on it, it's really freaking intricate. Which is why I say this all had to have been planned from the start. The author had a vision and he executes on it really well. That moment when Mau Mau theorizes that all the random coincidences she's witnessed might not be as random as she initially thought was the real kicker of the season for me. And look, even if I did find some of these smaller plots somewhat predictable, they were still very well written to the point where you can enjoy the work put into solving them. And like I said, that strongest part of the series, the one that's really going to draw you in, is the writing quality. As this has some of the most incredible plot and character writing in the last year. Probably longer than that. Seriously, I was blown away by how well constructed the plot is and how greatly the characters were written. The whole thing is realistic and believable for the most part, while also giving you a sense of fun and intrigue with the comedy and mystery. This not really being action-oriented as a series, I didn't pay much attention to the animation. But that's not to say that it's bad. The art style and overall look were fantastic. I loved the use of colors, the character designs. Visually, it's very satisfying to look at. But what I was really here for was the story, and this certainly delivers on that. And then you can tack on Hanani Nate as one of the best anime intros of 2023. And yeah, this one's one you gotta watch. But overall, this series deserves a solid 9 out of 10. It honestly contends with the best of the best from last year. It's fun, very intriguing, and written epically. If you haven't already checked this one out, you'd best get on it because this series is utterly fantastic for its writing alone. I thoroughly enjoyed this series and I can't tell you enough that it has some incredible storytelling, but I think that's about enough out of me. If you liked this video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons, as those simple but free actions do really help me. And if you have thoughts, share them in the comments. Otherwise, I hope you join me in the next one. Later.